depriving officer a means of protection. Just to correct one thing that Ms. Curtis said is that I do agree that count 4 would not be admissible, but not because it's not violent, it's because it's a misdemeanor and so wouldn't qualify under 921.1416B. It has to be a felony. This has previously been changed to the defense.
Thank you. And you want to enter this, obviously, depending on how the motion goes, this is the exhibit that you're intending to admit into evidence?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
But it should be admitted for the purpose of this hearing as well.
Okay.
So, Your Honor, first of all, the defense waived this issue entirely when it did not object to the admission of the testimony of Sergeant Beltran. It has to be a contemporaneous objection, and it wasn't, and therefore they have waived the issue. But to the extent that there's no basis for this objection anyway, we do wish the court to decide on the merits. The defense really is arguing inconsistently. They argue and concede that the law is that whether a crime constitutes a prior violent felony under 921.1416B is determined by the surrounding facts and circumstances of the prior crime. And they cited in their own motion Spann versus State, 857 Southern 2nd, 845, Florida, 2003. Then they argue inconsistently that, for example, battery of a Leo is not a violent crime, and they cite a case that has nothing to do with the death penalty statute. They cite Hearn, which is under the violent criminal statute. So they really can't have it both ways. Either it's cited under the facts and circumstances or it's not, and the case law is clear that it is a violent crime. Now, recalling the facts and circumstances of the case, the defense does not cite the appropriate language from Sergeant Beltran's testimony. What they omit in their motion and in their argument today is that this is what Sergeant Beltran said. This testimony was read back to the state from the court reporter. Quote, "He can tase me, he can incapacitate me, and he can basically do whatever he wants to me. Also, if he hits me with it, it's a blunt object. He could hurt me, so all I was thinking right there was get my taser back." If the court would look at the information in the case, this was not charged as a deadly weapon because it was a taser. It was charged, if I may quote the language from the information, that the defendant did unlawfully and intentionally attempt to touch or strike Sergeant Raymond Beltran, a duly qualified law enforcement officer of the Broward Sheriff's Office, against his will with a deadly weapon, to wit, a blunt object, more specifically described as a conductive electronic weapon, knowing at the time that Sergeant Raymond Beltran was a law enforcement officer. The defendant pled to attempted aggravated battery of a law enforcement officer with a deadly weapon. They can't come in and say, oh, it's not really a deadly weapon. It was pled as a blunt object. Sergeant Beltran verified that in his testimony before the court and the jury, that he was concerned about it being a blunt object as well as being a taser, because either way, if it left him incapacitated, he would certainly, worse things could have happened to him. The defense gets no credit that Sergeant Beltran was able to repel this attack. 921.1416B, the aggravator here, is that it was a felony of use of or threat of use of violence to the person. So there certainly was use of violence. There certainly was threat of use. That would be an attempt, and that counts as a life-threatening event. And when you consider the circumstances, the defendant, he's a mass murderer. He's killed 17 people, and he attacks this sergeant without provocation, manages to wrestle him to the floor, throwing punches at him, is able to remove his taser, get it out, has it in his hand clearly without Sergeant Beltran's hands on that taser. The taser is used. The sergeant doesn't know who actually pushed the button because then he knew he had to recover that. If that is not a life-threatening situation, then there are no life-threatening situations. But there are certainly many cases to support that this is a life-threatening situation, and I will get to those in a minute. But it certainly defies common sense to argue that this was not a life-threatening situation that Sergeant Beltran was in. And of course, this court has seen the video itself and could make a finding that this was that Sergeant Beltran was in a life or death struggle, especially if you consider that there wasn't even any help coming. The entire video, all the way until he was being escorted back to his cell, there is no help for Sergeant Beltran. And the fact that he was not seriously injured is quite fortunate, but has nothing to do with whether or not this was a life-threatening situation. Specifically, the cases that I would cite the court to, first is Jones, and that is at 440 Southern 2nd, 570, 1983 decision, which was a battery Leo, was the underlying felony that was deemed acceptable, that involved the use of a threat or violence to the person. The court went on to explain, and I folded back the page for your honor, it's at page 9 of the opinion, that the information revealed that the defendant resisted and physically confronted the police and had to be subdued and restrained. That's a simple bat Leo. It was much less than what we have here and was found to be an appropriate aggravating circumstance for a prior violent felony. I'd also cite to the court Daniel Johnson versus State, 465 Southern 2nd, 499, a 1985 decision. And in that case, the information was that there was a robbery and a burglary as a violent offense. It was the indictment showed for the robbery and the burglary that they both occurred at the same time, which is similar to what we have here. We have these three charges all in the same information. And so the violence flows to all of the felonies because, as the court saw, there was certainly violence in the attempted aggravated battery when he had the blunt object in his hand. There were blows struck, which was the bat Leo, which is certainly violence, and the depriving officer of means of protection, the taking of the taser. The court conceived also from the video, it doesn't have to rely just on Sergeant Beltran, that that was a violent offense. And under Johnson, it would be also admissible. In Simmons versus State, 934 Southern 2nd, 1100, 2006 Florida Supreme Court case. This was an aggravated assault of a law enforcement officer that was also found to be an aggravating factor as an assault involving the threat of violence. In that case, Simmons' actions caused the officer to feel threatened and to take evasive measures to avoid a head-on collision. So again, you have violence towards a police officer that was held to be sufficient. And then another Johnson, Terrell Johnson, 442 Southern 2nd, 193, 1983. This was an attempted robbery as being the prior violent offense. And in that case, the court found that the defendant stated the defendant had previously been convicted of felonies involving the use or threat of violence. The appellants in that case argued that the trial court erred in instructing the jury that the felonies of which Johnson had been convicted, one of which was attempted robbery, were as a matter of law a felony involving the use or threat of violence. And, Your Honor, what we have here is the removal of the taser itself should be considered, you can consider it as an attempted robbery or a robbery, in that he forcibly, by use or force of violence, removed the taser from the person of Sergeant Beltran. That is equivalent to a robbery. That's a use of violence to take that away from him. There's no question that per se would be a violent crime under Johnson, and that was a 1983 case. That same principle still holds true today in Bevel versus State, 983 Southern 2nd, 505, 2008, was for the same proposition that an attempted robbery is per se a violent offense. For all those reasons, ask the court to deny the defense motion, even if it wasn't waived, based on the merits, and also to admit the convictions for counts 1 through 3. Thank you.
We're still waiting on 2 jurors.
Okay.
So, do you want to continue until they get here?
I'm finished with my argument.
Okay.
I just have a quick response.
Okay.
I'll just address the cases. I think there were 2 that he sent us he did not address, but Judge, the Jones case that Mr. Marcus referred to, the question in that case was whether the death sentence could be upheld when it wasn't, the appellant argued it wasn't clear that the court didn't rely on non-statutory aggravating factors. One of the felonies, well, it wasn't actually convicted, he wasn't convicted of a felony, one of them was a juvenile matter, and it wasn't clear. The court did mention the battery, but it didn't explain whether, ultimately in its decision, whether that was what was relied upon in making the, in determining that the court had sufficient prior convictions to apply the prior violent felony. And in fact, there was one conviction that was, it didn't say what the charge was, but there was a conviction where the court specifically mentioned another crime involving physical bodily conflict with police officers and had to be physically subdued. The court made a point to note that the defendant was trained and skilled in the use of karate in that one, indicating that that was the conviction that it was relying on more heavily, in the sense that if the defendant is trained in karate, perhaps it was more of a potentially deadly confrontation. In the Simmons case, that was clearly a life-threatening crime. In that one, the defendant was accused of veering his car, and although he had another reason for it, he veered his car, making the police officer veer his car off the road to avoid an oncoming car and potentially crash into, a light pole or a sign or something. And that was, in his vehicle in a chase. So that was a life-threatening crime.
So you're suggesting that causing an officer to veer off the road and get into an accident is less life-threatening than grabbing a taser at close range and being able to do potentially whatever you want with it?
No, the opposite. I'm saying that the Simmons case that Mr. Marcus cited to support, that was a life-threatening crime. When you look at the facts and circumstances of causing an officer to veer, that's a life-threatening crime. When you look at the facts and circumstances of this case, of the Beltran case, those are not life-threatening circumstances. And then the Johnson case, that case involved a burglary and a robbery. This is Johnson, I don't remember what the citation was on this one. I know there were 2. But this was the robbery, the question was whether the burglary was a crime of violence, and it was attached, though, to a robbery, which at that time the court held was a per se crime of violence. However, the court still said that to simply instruct the jury at sentencing that a burglary was a felony involving the use or threat of violence for purposes of applying, at that time, 921.1415b, without making it clear this depends on the facts of the burglary, was error. So even the fact that the burglary was attached to a robbery, instructing the jury that that burglary was a crime of violence without saying that it depended on the facts, was error. The Mon case, and that's cited in our motion, it's 714 Southern 2nd 391 MAHN. says that it was error to submit a robbery as a prior violent felony without looking at the facts and circumstances. So even if the court were to find that the Jones case or the Johnson case approves of the use of battery on a law enforcement officer or robbery, it still has to look at the particular facts and circumstances of the offense. And the fact that there are cases that hold that they are violent felonies and cases that hold that they aren't indicates inconsistency in the law, which cannot be tolerated when the defendant is facing a sentence of death. In other words, an inconsistent application of this aggravating factor could lead to the arbitrary and capricious imposition of the death penalty. And for that, I would cite generally Gregg versus Georgia, 428 U.S. 153, at footnote 51, stating that the imprecision in the statute may render it unconstitutional for death penalty purposes. So, Judge, what we're asking is that even though we may have waived any objection to the presentation of the video and Sergeant Beltran's testimony, we haven't waived any objection to the entry of this paperwork into evidence, and we're asking that the state be precluded from arguing that this is an aggravating factor or any further argument. And if the court is not inclined to grant that, we would ask that the court specifically instruct the jury that the facts and circumstances surrounding the incident with Sergeant Beltran do not constitute a prior violent felony and should not be considered as an aggravating factor or a reason to impose the death penalty. If the court's not inclined to do that, we would ask that the court instruct the jury with respect to any of the 3 counts remaining that the court does not find to be a prior violent felony and state that those counts do not constitute prior violent felony and should not be considered as aggravation. Can I have just one moment, Judge?
Sure.
Conceding any waiver on the admission of the video and the testimony.
So when you're using the term prior violent felony, you're sort of summarizing 921, 141, 6B.
Yeah.
Correct? Because the actual wording is a capital felony or felony involving the use or threat of violence to the person.
Right.
So you're sort of paraphrasing, calling it a violent felony.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure there was no distinction. Because I'm aware of the VCC statute, and I find that is not applicable to this case. It's an entirely different issue that speaks to the VCC statute, and it's not applicable here. As far as the incident involving Sergeant Beltran, I do find that it absolutely involved the use of threat or violence to the person of Sergeant Beltran. The fact that he escaped without any major injury does not negate the fact that this crime of the defendant coming at him, knocking him over backwards on his chair, gaining control of his taser, which is a blunt force object, and coming within, I don't know, a couple feet of that blunt force object could have been used in many ways, even more ways than what Sergeant Beltran testified to. A blunt force object can create a hole in someone's head almost as much as a bullet can. This was violent in its very nature. This battery Leo, well, I will agree with the defense that certain battery Leos, because the battery on a law enforcement officer can be from a little slap or just touching an officer without their permission, up to and including an incident like the one that was depicted in this video. I find that all 3 of these qualify under the statute, the applicable statute, and I'm going to deny the defense motion and allow the state to use counts 1, 2, and 3 as argument for as an aggravating factor. Obviously, count 4 is a misdemeanor. The exhibit that the state has provided me in 25D for identification has redacted count 4. Have you all seen this?
Judge, can I look at it again?
Sure. It's a certified judgment.
Right.
It just has the count 4 is removed.
I just wanted to see if this is in paperwork.
Sure.
also removed in the information as well.
Pardon?
It's removed in the information as well.
That's what I meant when I said redacted.
I mean, in the judgment handing.
Okay.
The sentencing paperwork is not the sentencing.
I'm gonna have them lined up. I know you all are in a time crunch.
Thank you.
So Judge, we would like I understand Mr. Marcus's concern that it's difficult to redact the sentencing paperwork as to count 4,
Okay.
but we would like the jury, if they're gonna be instructed as to those 3 counts,
Okay.
that they're also advised as to the sentence that was imposed on Mr. Cruz as a result of entering into that plea, which I believe you sentenced him 25 years. So maybe the state and I can come to some agreement as to how we want that phrased, but that would be an additional objection if the state is not willing to agree to include the sentence that was imposed upon Mr. Cruz.
I couldn't see a way to redact it without destroying, showing the other counts, or count 4, because it's all intermingled on the page. This is the exhibit that we're moving into evidence. I have no objection if the defense wants to move something in on their behalf, or
Well, this is the certified judgment, so you're looking for the disposition.
Yes, with the sentence.
Okay.
And Mr. Klinger and I had worked on that, I don't know if it was this week or last week, and I had asked him to redact certain things, and then we got caught up in something else, so that may be why that wasn't done.
Let me just.
Maybe if the state is able to provide you with a copy of that, then
I'll just pull it up.
thank you.
but we want to introduce it today. They want to add to it, they can, or file something on their own. But Your Honor, we can get to the witness and we can deal with this after.
We are lining the jurors up
Okay.
right now. As soon as we have them ready to come in, I was gonna stop and put this on hold for a moment. Okay, the jurors are ready, so if we can just put a pin in this, please, and,
Jurors are answering.
good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The jurors are present. I'll state when you're ready, you may call your next witness.
Jennifer Montalto and Tony Montalto.
Your Honor, before the Montaltos can give me a brief citation.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to hear evidence again today about the impact of the murders on the family, friends, and community of the decedents. This evidence is presented to show a victim's uniqueness as an individual and the resultant loss by the decedent's death. However, you may not consider this evidence as an aggravating factor. Thank you. You said Jennifer and...
Jennifer Montalto and Tony Montalto.
They can come on up whenever they're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Thank you. You can go ahead and be seated. And when you're seated, please state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
Jennifer Montalto, Montalto.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Montalto. Are you the mother of Gina Montalto?
Yes, I am.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm going to show you a picture of State's Exhibit number 61 that's been admitted into evidence. Can you please identify this photograph?
Yes, that's my daughter, Gina Rose Montalto.
Thank you. Can you please show it to the jury? Thank you, Mrs. Montalto.
Ms. McKay, I think you're the witness.
I think they've decided that Mr. Montalto is going to go second.
He may not know that. I don't know if you want to take a minute to. He might be confused on the instructions or what. It's okay?
Okay.
Ms. McKay. Sir, do you want to come have a seat next to your wife?
Sure.
I can swear you in now.
I need to,
Do you need a minute?
we're going to need a minute in between our testimonies.
Okay, no problem. You can go ahead and have a seat with your wife for now.
Thank you.
Mrs. Montalto, did you prepare a statement for the court today regarding your daughter?
Yes, I have.
Are you prepared to read it for us now?
Yes, I am.
Please do so.
Gina Rose Montalto, forever 14. Our daughter, Gina Rose Montalto, was a special girl who melted every heart with her beautiful smile that lit up a room. She was instant friends with everyone she met. She had a great sense of humor and always made people laugh. She was a kind spirit, always eager to lend a helping hand. Gina was a member of her school color guard, a team which she loved dearly. She was a Girl Scout, a talented artist who illustrated for a local magazine. Gina loved to cook with her father and her grandmother, especially during the holiday seasons. She enjoyed volunteering, especially with children of differing abilities. Gina was best buddies with her little brother, Anthony, and she loved her whole family, especially all her cousins. She was an avid reader and loved the Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, and Hunger Games series of books. She loved books so much, she loved how they felt, how they smelled, and she once told me she wanted to live in a library. She played soccer and flag football in local recreational leagues. She always took great pride in her education. High grades and school involvement were a huge part of Gina's life. She had a bright future ahead of her. Since February 14, 2018, I live a life that is unimaginable for others, but for me is sad reality. Gina didn't come home from school that day. I had pledged to my daughter that I would hold her tight, support her, guide her, teach her, hug her, protect her, and love her with all my heart and soul. I told her from the day that she was born until I drew my last breath that all that I am was hers. I told my daughter I couldn't imagine my life without her. And now at a time in our lives, we should be focused on our children. I find myself questioning how I'll be able to make it to the next day. I worry about Gina's brother, Anthony, and how the anger, depression, and sadness that comes from his grief has shaped the outlook on the world. He and his sister were very close. He looked up to Gina. He wanted to do everything that she did. I'm concerned that the tragedy of Gina's death has denied him the opportunity to become who he was destined to be because of what has happened to our family. It is incredibly hard to watch my husband, Tony, struggle. He always makes sure our family is intact while balancing the demands of his work as he continues to protect and provide for our family. For the rest of our lives, I will live with the unspeakable loss and pain that comes with knowing there's an empty seat at our table, a bedroom Gina will never return to. We will continue to turn to our front door, wishing for Gina to walk through it.
Thank you, Mrs. Montalto.
So do you want to go ahead and, you said you needed a break before, okay, why don't you go ahead and your wife is welcome to go with you, and they can step outside and you can let me know how long they need to come.
Thank you.
Can you speak to the lawyers just briefly, please? we're just gonna have you sit here as opposed to having everyone go in and out for a few minutes while we wait for the next witness. Good afternoon, sir. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. You can have a seat. And when you're seated, please tell us your full name.
Anthony Vincent Montalto, Montalto.
Good afternoon, Mr. Montalto. Mr. Montalto, are you Gina's father?
I am.
And have you prepared something that you would like to share with the court today?
Yes.
Are you ready to do that, sir?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
I'll just say that as I watched my wife speak, I realized I'm wearing the same clothes that I took Gina to our last father-daughter dance together in. Gina Rose Montalto was my firstborn child. Her arrival added a new and exciting dimension to our lives. She came into this world with her eyes wide open, eager for the challenges before her. Her infectious smile was there from the start and brightened any room she entered, a quality she retained throughout her amazing life. I was so happy to be her father. She was beautiful and a gift from God as He chose to bless our family. Life without Gina is nearly unbearable. The pain I feel every day since she was murdered is unimaginable. My daughter was always trying to make things better for others. Gina loved to do volunteer work, especially if it involved helping kids. She was also a Girl Scout and active in our local church. Gina was known to all as an avid reader. One of her favorite quotations was, "I'm not choosing one of your paths. I'm making my own." She was indeed a very independent girl. Gina was not a bystander in her life. She was a vibrant participant. She had a fierce competitive spirit. Gina knew right from wrong, and she valued life. Once on a vacation, Gina was playing with her brother and cousins in a pool with a walk-in entry. A short time later, I saw Gina leading a woman back towards my wife and I. We were perplexed, thinking, what could Gina have done that caused this woman to want to speak with us? After a brief introduction, the woman related a story about how Gina saved her child's life. The child, who was only 2 and couldn't swim, had wandered into the shallows where Gina was playing. He fell into the water where he couldn't stand. Without missing a beat, Gina recognized his distress, picked him up, and returned him to shore as his parents rushed forward. The boy's mother was impressed by our 10-year-old daughter's quick thinking and her decisive action to rescue her son. She also wanted to buy Gina something to recognize her good deed. We said, of course, and thanked the woman for sharing the story. Gina proudly displayed her turtle gift in her room to this day. Gina was a lifesaver. She was kind, compassionate, and caring. Those are just a few of the qualities that made her so special. The pain I feel is magnified as I look at my wife and see her struggle without Gina. The light in her eyes that once reflected the joy she felt when looking at our wonderful children has vanished. The differing ways we have reacted to the murder of our child has caused a severe strain on our marriage. I love Jennifer very much, and it tears me apart to see her suffer from a problem that I can't fix. We have had to learn how to allow each of us to grieve our daughter's loss in our own way. It's an unbelievably difficult journey, but we are Gina's parents. We made and raised our amazing daughter. We will find a way forward, together, just as Gina would want us to do. Compounding the pain of Gina's loss is the effect it has had on our son. No father wants to see his children suffer. Gina was our best girl, and Anthony our best boy. Easy titles, since we had only one of each. My son struggles to make sense of Gina's death at her school. He and Gina were best buddies. Playing together and filling our house with laughter. Now there's a deafening silence, broken only by the deep sighs and soft sobbing that accompany what used to be happy memories of my children playing, making breakfast together on Mother's Day, or preparing holiday meals with me. That last line reminds me of one of my favorite Gina stories. She was about 9 years old. One of my friends tried to get her to give him the secret ingredient that made her dad's barbecue ribs so special. Gina looked him straight in the eye and told him the special ingredient was love. After her murder, I received some lovely notes written to our daughter by her friends and fellow students. They described Gina as unique, kind, cheerful, and intelligent. It's great to see all these special traits we as her parents thought she had come shining through in her actions. My ability to work and provide for my family has been severely diminished because of our daughter's murder. In my profession as an airline pilot, I must be able to travel. Without my loving daughter, I struggle at times to find the ability to leave my family. I am more concerned about the well-being of my wife, my son, and myself. I now work about 1/3 of a normal schedule. Even when a trip goes well and I return home happy to see my family, there's always an empty place in my heart when I realize that Gina's not there to greet me. That empty place in my heart, the unquenchable yearning to hug my daughter, to speak about her experiences, to feel the love and see her radiant smile, never goes away. My hopes and dreams for her future, her achievements, her marriage, my grandchildren, were stolen from me. On Gina's confirmation day, I wrote to her and said, Gina Rose, you are the best girl a dad could ask for. You're fun to be around, whether we are sharing a quiet moment, watching a TV show, cheering for our star-crossed New York Jets, or laughing as I struggle to stand up on a paddleboard. Thank you for being so wonderful. Gina Rose Montalto, my magnificent daughter, your story ended much too soon. Gina, my love for you is without boundaries. And it will never end.
Thank you, Mr. Montalto.
Thank you.
Max Schechter. Ryan Schechter. And Karen DeSacia.
Whoever's going to be testifying, if you would just please raise your, even Stacy would, if you would just please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The younger gentleman, would you please state your full name first, and then is it your dad?
Yeah.
And then if dad would state his full name, please.
Ryan Jacob Schachter, Schachter. Max Schachter, Schachter.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Schechter, Ryan Schechter, and Ms. Karen DeSacia. Mr. Schechter, are you the father of Alex Schechter?
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Mr. Schechter, I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 32, and I'm going to ask you to identify this photograph, please.
That's Alex.
Okay. Could you please show the jury this photograph? For the record, this has been already marked into evidence. Thank you, sir.
Dedicated trombone player of the award-winning Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Eagle Regiment Marching Band. Movie aficionado. Guard on his Parkland Rec basketball teams. Huge New England Patriots and Boston Celtics fan. He loved chocolate chip cookies and Nutella crepes and smoothies. A video gamer, especially late at night with his friends, a jokester, a nephew, a cousin, a grandson, a brother, and his son, my forever 14-year-old little boy, Alex Schechter. 4.5 years ago, Alex was just a 9th grader sitting in his English class at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School on Valentine's Day. A day that should have been filled with candy, hearts, balloons, and love. It was the last day we would see our sweet little boy, Alex. The last day we would hug Alex. The last day we would kiss Alex. Our family is broken. There is this constant emptiness. I feel I can't truly be happy if I smile. I know that behind that smile is the sharp realization that part of me will always be sad and miserable because Alex isn't here. My fiance, Karen, and I can't talk to Alex every day. We can't see and hear about all the fun he would be having in college right now. We'll never be able to have conversations with him about what he's going to do for his career, his dating, and his love life. Would he have ended up at his dream school, University of Connecticut? Or would he have stayed closer to home to attend a university in Florida with his best buddies? We will never know, and that haunts us. Not only do Karen and I miss out on all that Alex brought to us as parents, He will never be able to spend time with his big brother, Ryan, his big sister, Morgan, or his little sister, Avery. We blended our two families together. It was Alex that made sure that the new sibling bonds were held tight. He's not here to make us all laugh anymore. He's not here, period. It's an ache that is just constant. With his big smile and his warm eyes, he made friends wherever he went. He was easygoing, kind, and had an infectious laugh. He always wanted to do the right thing, and he always wanted to please his mommy and his daddy. He was always the friend that included everyone. I wish every single day that this was a nightmare that I could just wake up from. As I wake up each day, I quickly snap back into this horrible reality and realize that Alex is never coming home. I want my family back. I want my sweet Alex back. Losing Alex the way I did, it is a heartbreak like no other. Losing my son, Alex, is the greatest sorrow of all. At 5 a.m., the night before Alex's funeral, I was really struggling writing his eulogy. My son Ryan was trying to help me. He suggested we look through the garbage can in Alex's room underneath his desk to see what he had thrown away the day before he went to school. Maybe we could find something in there to help me start writing the most painful speech I would ever give. We were shocked when we found the most beautiful poem I had ever read. It was called "Life is Like a Roller Coaster." We found out that Alex had written it for Mrs. Haas's 4th period English class. Alex was a talented writer. Even at age 14, his ability to put his feelings and emotions into words is part of what made him so special. Here's the poem that captures what is special and unique about Alex. And Alex's brother Ryan would like to read it to you now.
Life is like a roller coaster. A free verse poem by Alex Schachter. Life is like a roller coaster. It has some ups and downs. Sometimes you can take it slow or very fast. It may be hard to breathe at times, but you just have to push yourself and keep going. Your bar is your safety. It's like your family and friends. You hold on tight and don't let go. But sometimes you might throw your hands up, because your friends and family will always be with you, just like that bar keeping you safe at all times. It may be too much for you at times. The twists, the turns, the upside downs, but you get back up and keep chugging along. Eventually it all comes to a stop. You won't know when or how, but you will know that it will be time to get off and start anew. Life is like a roller coaster.
Now, I'd like to read a statement from Karen, Alex's stepmom, that shows how much of an impact Alex had on her life and the life of her 2 little girls, Morgan and Avery. As I read this on behalf of Karen, please keep in mind it's her thoughts and her words and how much she loved and adored Alex. After my husband, Eamon, passed away, when my 2 little girls were just 6 and 2, I never thought that I would have a complete family again. Once I met Max, Ryan, and Alex in 2010, I realized how much my girls and I were missing. Blending our 2 families together was pure chaos. But the kind of chaos that creates the very best memories. The kids laughed together, they fought together, they complained over chores together, and became a real loving family together. But that all ended February 14th, 2018. The day that Alex was taken from us was the day that my family was permanently broken. Even though I never met Alex's birth mother, Debbie, I know what a special person she was to create such a sweet, kind, and loving boy. Alex's smile lit up his entire face, from his dimple in his cheek to the twinkle in his eye. I will forever miss sitting and helping Alex with his homework every day after school, volunteering in his band class, watching him play basketball with his friends, and seeing that beautiful face light up when I made his favorite meal, beef pot roast. I'm heartbroken that Alex will never get married or have children of his own to pass on his beautiful smile to. It makes me sick when I think that our 3 other children will someday have to talk about Alex to their children in the past tense, always remembering their sweet, funny brother up to the age of 14. Only 14. It used to make me happy when someone asked me how many children I had. I love telling people that I had 2 boys and 2 girls. I can easily talk to others about how much Alex loved his siblings. He worshipped his big brother, Ryan. Whether they were playing video games or basketball on the driveway together, he loved to watch anime with his big sister, Morgan. And I fondly remember how his little sister, Avery, would massage his back just so she could hang out with Alex and his friends. Most older brothers wouldn't want their little sister to leave them. Most older brothers would want their little sister to leave them alone, but not Alex. Now when someone asks me about my children, I get a knot in my stomach. I get nervous that if I say I will stumble on their ages and have to explain why my son Alex will forever be only 14 years old. There's not a day that goes by when I don't wish I could see and hug Alex again. When I wish I could just slip him an extra slice of pizza while volunteering at his band practice, or cheer him on at his Parkland Rec basketball game. I miss my son Alex every day.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz.
Are you good time for a recess, or do you have?
There's just one more, Your Honor.
Okay.
Isabel Dalu.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You can be seated. And when you're seated, please state your full name for us.
Isabel Ferreira DeLu.
And how do you spell your last name, please?
D as in David, A-L-U.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Ms. Delu.
Good afternoon.
Are you a good friend of Denise and Damian Loughran, the parents of Kara Loughran?
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 75, which has already been marked into evidence. Can you please identify this photograph?
Yes, it's Kara.
Would you please show it to the jury? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Delu, did Kara's parents, Denise and Damian Loughran, ask you to prepare a statement on their behalf to be read to the jury today?
Yes.
And are you prepared to read that for us?
Yes.
Would you do so, please?
My name is Isabel DeLu, and I am blessed and honored to have been a part of Kara Marie Loughran's life. I am a close friend of her parents, Denise and Damian Loughran. Kara was born on February 21st, 2003, a beautiful, healthy baby. She reminded me of a porcelain doll, and we were all instantly in love with her. Kara was a great student. She worked hard and enjoyed learning. Her dedication to her studies showed in her straight A grades. She loved the beach, she loved to surf, and most of all, she loved spending time with her family. Kara had a super close relationship with her parents and her brother. They all loved spending time together. Losing Kara has left a crushing absence in their lives. Kara had a huge family whom she loved dearly, and they all loved her just as much. She was looking forward to her family's vacation to Ireland in the summer of 2018, where she would be spending time with the family she had there. She was excited to see the ones she had already met in person and meet the ones she had only spoken with via phone or FaceTime. Kara had many friends. One of them, my own daughter. Kara was her first friend. And the big sister she didn't have. Her school friends remember how much they liked her. And what Kara had, I'm sorry, let me start that part over. Her school friends remember how much they liked her. And what a great friend she was. They loved her optimistic personality, her bright, beautiful smile, and kind heart. They speak of the difference she made in their lives and how much they miss her. Kara was excited for her upcoming 15th birthday and the celebration she had planned with her friends and family. Kara dreamed of getting her driver's permit and her driver's license. She dreamed of her first date, her first kiss, and falling in love. Kara dreamed of going to homecoming and prom. She dreamed of graduating at the top of her class with all of her loved ones watching. But Kara didn't make it to any of these milestones. Kara had started Irish dancing again. She had convinced my daughter to try it with her, and they both stayed on. Kara was looking forward to performing at the St. Patrick's Day festivities. My daughter has continued Irish dance to honor Kara's memory. Our dance school now honors Kara's legacy with a feis named after her. The Cara dances on, Fesh. We honor her memory by awarding educational scholarships to dancers. All of our dancers are proud to honor Cara through dance. On March 11, 2017, Cara made her confirmation. She chose me as her sponsor, and I was beyond honored. I wrote a letter for her to read before she was confirmed, a letter in which I talked about her bright and amazing future, a letter in which I promised that I would always be there for her, no matter what. Cara meant the world to me, and I miss her terribly. So do her parents, family, and friends.
Thank you, Ms. Delo.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, members of the jury, we're going to take a recess for about 10 or 15 minutes. Please do not discuss the case among yourselves. Please leave your notepads behind. Thank you. Okay, the jurors have been excused. We're going to take a 10 to 15-minute recess. In the meantime, I'm going to pass out the preliminary instructions or proposed instructions that I'm proposing to read to the jurors before they leave today. I'll give you all a copy so that if you have any questions or amendments or additions that you would like to suggest, you may do so before I read it before they leave.
And Your Honor, that was all the victim impact witnesses the state has for today. There'll be others tomorrow.
Okay, I thought that's what you had said, but I wanted everyone to have the chance to go over those instructions before I actually read them. I want the lawyers to be able to read them before I read them to the jurors. So you all can take a 10-minute recess. I'll have the sheriff's office put the proposed instruction on the tables for you all to review, okay?
Thank you.
Other than that, we're in recess. Thank you.